Hi, I'm David Hawks, and you're on The Creators with us today. And I'm really excited, and I'm not dressing this up. I'm really excited because I have Bill LEEB here with me today. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
It's great that you're with me today. This is great. We're going to talk music and Bill LEEB.
And yeah, and we're at the Armoury in Vancouver.
Amazing studio, which you've worked in many times, right?
Yes, this place has ghosts of fame and greatness from everyone from Metallica to Frontline Assembly to you name it.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody's. And initially with Brian Adams and Jim Valance, so it's like a historical studio.
Nice of them to have us in today, for sure.
Yep.
So you, Bill, you were in Skinny Puppy. You were also a member of Frontline Assembly still and Delerium. You've also had spin-offs of Intermix, Cyberactive, Noise Unit, ProTech. You've got 568 credits on discography. That's like, if you sold one record of all of those, you'd be selling more than some indie bands do. But you have 568 credits on discography. You've got an amazing body of work.
Well, I think when me and Mr. Reese Fulber started doing music, we came up with a caption that was basically like, we never want to have a real job. So we're just gonna do music and whichever way, and there was no preset plan of any kind as to how and what we were going to achieve, and we just started making noise, and one thing led to another, and I don't know, but somehow we just got there, and you know, 25, 30 years later, I've never had to apply for a job. I think I applied for a job once to work in a hot dog vending thing at Expo, and the guy said, "You're too old." That was 25 years ago, and I said, wow. I better keep making music. I just did it for a joke, just to see if I could get a job.
Sure. That's the best thing that ever happened. You didn't get the job. Like, best thing for all of us.
It was kind of a reality check, but it was kind of fun to do that. So it's like, yeah, it's been a crazy, wild, and perilous journey. And all I can say to anybody out there, if there's anything you really want to do, give it a shot, because like, if I think now, like, you know, before that I did have employment, and I think to this day, if I didn't quit that and just give this a chance, I would have missed out on it's be hard to fathom what I missed out, what I've experienced in the last 30 years. So it's like, if you got a dream, go for it, and worst case scenario, you know, it doesn't get to where you want it to, but at the same time, you got to give it the chance, you know.
Absolutely.
That's what I say. You know, be a dreamer. If you really want something bad enough, you know, like, there's always ways. You know, you might not get what you think you want, but you'll find a way in how you can be involved and somehow still be part of it, and that might just be enough, you know.
Right. Well, we're going to start really early. You were born in Vienna, and then at 14 you moved to Kitimat, BC with your parents, is this correct?
Well, from Vienna, 14 and a half, and we moved to Vancouver. Right. And we were here for about 6 months, and then my stepfather got a job at being a metal analyst up in Kitimat, so we went from basically Vienna to like Hicktown, Kitimat, 20,000 from the heart and you know, center of civilization of Europe, to like
a small town.
A small town, and that was a culture shock. And having to learn English and
course, yeah.
all that, it was a big change for a young guy. And then next thing you know, I moved to Vancouver at 21.
So in the early days, because Vancouver's known for like rock and roll, you know, you have the DOAs, the Troopers, the Bryan Adams and all that, and then you have the punk with the DOAs and the Young Canadians and all that. But Vancouver is also like an industrial music mecca, really. Chicago and Vancouver, I would say, are very, very lauded for our industrial music. When you were younger, did you have some inspiration that sort of made you want to be one of these? Well, basically, you ushered in industrial music into Vancouver with only just a few others. Were there other bands that sort of made float your boat?
Well, you know, I was always into like live music, you know, when I first moved here, there was the Body Shop, there was Black Bart's, and, you know, used to go see bands like Trooper and Loverboy, you know, when they were still cutting their teeth, you know, they'd come on, they would do 3 sets, and I just used to love watching live bands, and I think that just the love of that and the love of music literally led from one thing to another, you know. And I always thought when I was watching these guys, you know, because back then, you know, it was all about guitars, bass, and drums, and I thought, you need to really love it, you need a lot of talent, you know, and be really diligent, and, you know, these guys were playing 3 sets one night, and I thought, you know, maybe that's not my way into music, and it was already sort of a set style formula, so that you know, I just kept my ears and eyes open to the ground until but then when the whole new wave thing started, that's when I really got, you know, first time I heard the Cars.
Yeah, of course.
And that's kind of, and you know, early Kraftwerk, obviously, the whole krautrock thing. But you know, that whole new wave era, that's when I really kind of got intrigued.
Was the drum machine something that gravitated to you from the new wave movement?
Well, you know, and then the first album that I bought that was sort of off the rock thing was The Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope and Then Hang Themselves, and that and the Sex Pistols and Kevin Crompton, you know, like he had the first Sex Pistol tape in Vancouver as far as I was concerned, and once we heard that, you know, we were excited, you know, we were like, this, you know, the fashion, the music. I think Kevin even was like in a punk garage band in Vancouver, and you know, I really got into DOA, and I think that, you know, and out of DOA, you know, came, you know, Wire and Joy Division. And I guess we went from, you know, from Trooper to Wire to Joy Division. I don't know, it was kind of we were waiting for our moment, you know.
Talking about fashion, people thought we were freaks. I mean, I had a mohawk at one time when I was really young, and, you know, people started looking at you freaks. So you were doing industrial music, but it was punky in its sensibility and that, but it was really fashion driven too. But people looked at us like freaks.
Well, we used to get threatened all the time walking around Vancouver. Like, people would ask, are you new wave or are you punk? And it's like, if you had the wrong answer, you might get beat up. And you know, and the whole punk thing, you know, got like a really bad spin. And I just think it's funny because now I just see every third person with you know, shaved sides, guys with tattoos, beards, you know, like, it's just so normal now. And back then, it was life-threatening, so I guess we've come full circle with all of that. So I think that's kind of interesting to see how it all kind of evolved.
Yeah. So one thing about Vancouver I find, and I'm going to tell a quick little story. I was in Munich in an airport transferring through on the way to Berlin a few years ago, and I told you about this, but I opened up a music magazine, and there's Bill LEEB looking at me from the magazine, 4-page spread. A lot of people tend to leave Vancouver, and they go away and they be famous, and they have a big career. You decided to stay and live in Vancouver. I was wondering, first of all, why you decided to live in Vancouver, and don't underestimate this fellow here. You play in front of like festivals for 20,000 people in Europe quite regularly. You've played in Moscow, Eastern Germany, Mexico, US, all through Europe. You have an amazing career outside of here in Vancouver. It's kind of like, is this your place where you have some solace?
I guess. I mean, it's like, you know, it just had its own little environment, you know, where we could all, you know, like grow and flourish, you know what I mean? It's like, and I kind of, I don't know, I think that we had the right energy and the right thing, and like it's amazing. There was this small group of people that you know, we were like the Industrial Breakfast Club of Canada, and we all got together, and out of all this stuff, you know, like spawned all this music, you know,
Nine Inch Nails and all that stuff.
The thing about Vancouver, like the craziest thing is like I was at the Body Shop one night with a friend, and we were watching a band, and I don't know, do you know Debbie Jones?
Yes, of course, yeah.
You know,
DJ Debbie, bless her heart, rest in peace.
She actually like came up to me while we were sitting there and asked me if I could pretend to be their friend because they were trying to get rid of these guys, right, at a table. So, you know, we hit it off. And then one day she took me down to Pacific Center when they used to have Eaton's, and Kevin worked there in the pen department. Right. And she introduced us, and that's how it all happened. Wow. And like, it's almost kind of like what are the odds of that, right?
Yeah. You guys have had a #3 record in the UK with Silence, a #1 record in Ireland with Silence. You've had 3 #1 US dance singles, which is quite amazing. You have a new Delerium record called Mythology, and so you've had a lot of success with the Delerium project. And what I like about the Delerium thing too is you've had your own career in your own right, but it's a very collaborative project. You had DJ Tiesto was worked on it, Jackie Hunt of Single Gun Theory, Matthew Sweet's been on it, Lee Nash from Sixpence None the Richer, Christy Thirsk. When I was at CBC, we had a poll, and Christy Thirsk came up #2 vocalist of all time next to Aretha Franklin. So you've had all these amazing people work within your project, and how does it feel to be in a collaborative project as opposed to doing your own thing?
Well, I think, you know, like, I mean, little did we know that it was going to turn into such a big thing, you know, in its own right, and like, when you know, even if you think about it, like, I don't want to like dwell on it, but actually Silence in the UK, it went to #2.
Oh.
The only song that kept us out of #1 was these silly girls called All Saints.
Oh, right.
And they had a huge hit, right? Like, and so otherwise we would have been #1. We got asked to be on Top of the Pops, which to me is the crowning glory, because
Yeah,
the
of
week
course.
before was The Cure. And so they asked us, and the only reason we didn't do it was because Sarah was going to India, and it didn't line up with their schedule. And Top of the Pops were like, well, you know, if Robert Smith will take a time out, you know, we're not going to adjust this. So,
You're on the Creators now.
Yes, just
Right.
as good, right?
Right.
But you know, so like it from this little ambient project in my bedroom, you know, to be able to work with all these artists, I think it opened a lot of doors for me and Reese, because, you know, then Reese ended up doing his Conjure One thing, and you know, even Sinead O'Connor showed up, and we all kinds of people. So like it was like it opened our whole world to other things, and led to other, and you know, we're still doing it. So I think.
Is the lesson in that you shouldn't really just be so insular, that you should really always be open to other things?
Well, you know, like, I think the whole thing goes back to, you know, the day, you know, when we started music and they created a thing called the sampler. I looked at this thing and went, you know, this is the future, because you can be a rock band, you can be an orchestra, you can do anything you want with this thing.
Right.
And so you have no limits, so you don't have to be just one band, and if that band breaks up, your career's over. But I guess the thing is to keep an open mind, work with as many people as possible, and do as many different things, and don't put all your eggs in one basket, and this way you can always do music, and you become more creative and open to other things, and somehow it'll all make sense at the end of the day.
you guys play in front of big crowds in Europe. Why Europe? Why do you think they love you so much? Is it just their history with industrial music?
Well, yeah. Plus, they're set up for that. You know, like in Europe, you know, you have so many countries, but they're all so close together, and each country has its own identity and its own music scene. But you know, each one will have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 big festivals, and a lot of them are kind of related to electronic music. The goth scene is really huge over there, right? It's like a culture, right? When you go to Mera Luna and you see 20,000 people and everybody's wearing black, and these aren't just people dressed up for the weekend. You know, this is a lifestyle, and they like that kind of music, and they're not influenced by, you know, the Kardashians or Justin Bieber. They've never heard of these people. They don't care. They're still living with The Cure and all this stuff, and that's great, you know. So it's like, so you go over there and you just kind of really respect it, because people love Frontline, they love Puppy, and you know, like, and so this is what they grew up with, and this is what they listen to. It's great to see this other culture that doesn't revolve around, you know, LA and Hollywood and America, you know. So
Europe's refreshing.
Yeah, like, you know, bands like Sisters of Mercy are still selling out every place they play there, and then of course, you know, look at a band like Rammstein, you know, who are really big,
amazing,
you know, who do 40 to 50,000. And they're like a hyped up version of Frontline meets Puppy, you know, with bigger production, but the same concept, you know. And so it's like, so yeah, that's the great thing about Europe. Totally different place, you know. And so when we go over it, we're going to do Mera Luna again this year. And last time we played Mera Luna was pretty epic, because the last band of the night when we were standing on stage was the official one and only Bauhaus reunion with the entire band. And so I'm side stage, standing there, and you know,
Daniel Ash and Peter and everybody
doing their thing, and we're like getting drunk, and 20,000 people out there, and we're like, hey, this is pretty good.
Yeah. You mentioned in our phone call the other day, Severed Heads and bands like that really turn you on musically, and that you're friends with over the years. It must be quite remarkable when you're working with these people, and they've had long extended careers too, and they're still finding their audience.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Tom, like, he gives me credit for being the first person to acknowledge him from North America, and we brought him over to Network, and me and Kenny picked him up at the airport, you know, and I think Tom's like 5'4", and me and Kevin, you know, Kevin's like 6'5", and we had this big black hair, and I think at first when he saw us standing waiting for him, he was looking at like, you know, who are these weird guys, you know, but...
I have to ask you, Bill, going back, this is for the Puppy fans, okay? Mm-hmm. Back in the day with Skinny Puppy, do you have some memories about it, like being a time when you felt you were really breaking through? Like, what was it like to be in Skinny Puppy at the time when everything was so controlled, but you guys came out of nowhere, man?
Well, I just remember like me and Kevin, like the first time, the very first Puppy review we ever read, and we bought the NME, and we were on Granville Street, and we just released Remission, and like Dave Henderson, who had a thing called the Wild Planet Bands, and it just said Skinny Puppy. It says, from the land of Gordon Lightfoot and Anne Murray storms these dark-clad guys. Who the hell do these guys think they are with this, you know, like, and we were just like,
awesome.
We thought, we're there.
Yeah,
this is like this
New
is
Music
when,
Express,
like,
amazing.
You know, this is like, you know, from the band of the Clash and the Pistols and all that stuff I mentioned. All of a sudden they noticed us, and then, you know, the funny thing is, like, even on the very first tour, which is, we bought like a 3/4 panel van in North Vancouver, we put Kevin's grandma's couch in the back, loaded up the gear, and just drove across Canada and America. But college radio stations then, we were in the top 10 of all the college radio stations with REM, with all that kind of music. And it seemed to get accepted, you know, like no rhyme or reason why, because nothing really sounded like it, and we didn't sound like a pretty band, you know.
It was completely different. I mean, I remember playing it at the Love Affair as a DJ off a cassette and just going, and immediately you hit a nerve with people.
And even the first tour, we had people everywhere, like the Diamond Club in Toronto was full, you know, like, and Chris Shepherd was promoting us, and it was like, it was just a thing, you know. We never had to be the band that were playing to 20 people a night, and
yeah, that's great.
I'll take it, you know.
And Skinny Puppy's still doing big shows now as well.
One of the biggest cult bands around, you know. It's like, so it maybe it was just a different time, a different era. But college radio station helped a lot back then. Even CITR, we used to go up there and host a show and do this and that, and they play different music now.
It was also an age of music discovery. People were more apt to, like I remember when, once again, when I was spinning, sometimes if you played music that was on the radio, I know a couple clubs I played, people would walk off. You would never play a song that was on the radio. As soon as it was on the radio, you didn't play. You had to go play the new stuff. You had to hunt it down, and you had to educate people. And that's where Skinny Puppy came out of, I really believe, is people just discovered you and they fell in love with you. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, and then there was an article where it said that Puppy was the most sort of like, how would you say, the most influential alternative new band to come along in the electronic scene in Canada, right? And
I can't disagree with that.
You know,
I agree with that.
But it was so exciting, you know, for us. It was just like, you know, it was never about money, fame, about anything except to, like, we had all this gear, and it was just learning how to use it and make it work for you, and think, you know, you're actually making something that sounds like some of your icons used to make, you know, from the Kraftwerks or whoever, and that you
David
could actually,
Bowie's, you know, Berlin sessions, and
if you could generate that, you know, and we were just so excited about that, and we just wanted to get out there and do it, you know, and then I think on our first tour, our per diems were $5 a day, and that was it, you know. And like, who cares, you know? We were just happy to have the opportunity to go out and do it. And so I think if you have that mindset, then, you know, then there's a, you know, good chance somehow that it'll work for you, you know. And you know, we used to sleep in the back of people's record stores, and they'd bring us sandwiches. in the morning, we'd get in the van, and but we were happy, you know. I find like in some ways we're more happy then than when you start accumulating things, you know.
Right, of course.
It's like,
freedom.
I think it's a false conception that, you know, the more you acquire, the more happy you are. I find like the less we had, actually, the more, you know, the more happy we were, and so I guess that it's kind of ironic, you know.
Yeah. So, you have to say, no regrets. You made the right choice. You went with your art, and it worked out.
Yeah, I think it was just strictly for the love of music, you know, like, and you know, obviously you need good fortune, good luck. You know, you need to, you know, there's all kinds of elements that have to come to play, but at the end of the day, it's really all about the music, right? And
I agree.
And you just gotta, like Reese always says, you know, like, you gotta be in the game, you know, like, I mean, you know, good or bad. You can make a bad album, or you can make, but you gotta make an album, right? That's
great. Well, Bill, thank you very much for coming on the show. And mindphaser.com for all the frontline stuff, and you've got a new record on called Mythology with Delerium.
Yes.
On Network.
Actually, this one's on Metropolis, first one, yeah. Okay. No worries.
And so, and you're going to do some tours this summer, so I just want to say thanks again for dropping by in the Armoury studios with us today. It means a lot to have you know, share your story here, just a little bit of it, so thank you.
All right, check it out. Thanks, guys. Thank you, David.
Thank you.